we're gonna dive straight into this pressing challenge that's facing pretty much every sector, including ours, right? As Tobes mentioned, trust has been a major theme for today, and it's only fitting that we end and bookending this with a significant test of that trust, which is AI, right? And what you do with it, what happens with your information, and so on and so forth. So we are honored to have Dr. Paul Dongha join us to talk about this topic, and I'll let you give a quick elevator pitch about the work you're doing on this in this space.
Great. Thank you, Ahmed. And it's lovely to be here. Thank you for the invitation and allowing me to participate. Just a little bit about me. I have co-authored a book which is dotted around the venue here. I'm head of responsible AI and AI strategy for NatWest Bank. I have a fairly long history in AI. I did a doctorate in AI in the early 90s when no one really cared about it. There were no jobs in it. And in fact, it was in agentic AI, which seems to be the flavor of the month, it seems. AI agents are everywhere. I did research, I taught in it, and I did research in it at Manchester University. And really, the turning point for me was really 2019 when I had a job in a big corporate, a big Swiss bank. And I just quit. And I said, I'm not doing this anymore because there's something that's really, really urgent and really important that I think we have to face into. And that's the ethical risks of AI. So AI ethics, responsible AI, pretty much the same thing. And here was my take on it. There'll be no end of people building AI systems with great fervor and great energy. There's a lot of money to be made in it. It's transformational. But how many people are really, really going to focus on the ethical risks of AI from a practitioner's point of view? And because I was lucky enough to have done research and built these systems, I kind of had the inside view of how they work and therefore what the risks are. So really what I do now is I talk a lot about those risks. And I say there's great things that we can get from AI, but we have to mitigate the risks and therefore choose a course to navigate how we use AI so that it uplifts and benefits society, benefits our colleagues at work, and ultimately, for me, at least at NatWest, benefits our customers. And I think that's quite a tough journey at the moment, but it's extremely rewarding.
Yeah. And really, the goal of this session is to take an enterprise lens on this and think about the three P's: the product, people, and process, right? And how to approach that and manage risk and governance in your use of AI and your partner's use of AI as well. So, let's first set the scene and demystify AI for anyone that needs it here. But can you explain simply what AI is, what it isn't?
Yeah.
What are some of the myths that you'd like to bust? Agentic AI, for example, what is it?
Yeah.
And what are the limitations of AI from your view? I think you're famous in saying brain has not been decoded. I would say yet, but
Okay.
but let's open with that. Let's see.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Hamid. I mean, I think it's useful to do this because if you read about AI, certainly in the popular press, and if you're not an AI practitioner, you don't develop these systems, it's really hard to separate the hype from the reality. Um, so AI as a term has been around since 1956. It was coined in the US, and for many, many years it was a niche thing, and people used artificial intelligence in certain industrial applications. So it never really surfaced in everyday use. It then started gaining traction through something called machine learning. So sometimes credit lending decisions, fraud detection at organizations like banks, sometimes in insurance as well, was based on something called machine learning. But still, it didn't really gain traction until the transformer architecture, which was the thing that's in ChatGPT. So November the 30th, 2022, I kind of do remember that date, which is really quite sad. This OpenAI launched ChatGPT, and it kind of the world really pivoted at that point. But the thing about these systems is that they're just computer programs, and the way they operate, if I could really, really put it simply, is they predict the next sequence of characters given the preceding sequence. So if you type a question to ChatGPT, it will generate not one word at a time, it will generate part of a word at a time. That part word is called a token. And all it's doing is it's looking at the first token it generates, and then it thinks, what's the next most likely token? And when I say next most likely, what it's basically doing is it's looking internally at a lot of mathematical numbers, which are called weights. And those weights have been created by training this AI through a training phase for a number of months on pretty much all of the text that you'll find on the web, right? So Reddit, everything on social media, Wikibooks. I mean, if you can go to a website, that AI model has been created by by reading all of that. I say reading, by ingesting all of that text. What that really means is that AI system is actually not predictable, but it's very good at generating the next most likely sequence of characters given the preceding sequence of characters. I won't get too technical. It's called auto-regressive decoding, but that AI has no intelligence in the way that you would ascribe intelligence to another human being. It really is just generating a sequence of tokens, and that's all it's doing. But the most magical thing about it is that sequence is pretty plausible. It's pretty accurate to most people. It's like, wow, that's really quite something. And in fact, the designers and developers of these systems actually shocked themselves when they developed it. It was like, wow, it actually works, because we've been battling with this thing for 20 years. So I think the key thing to note is it's not intelligent in the way that you and I are. It's really plausible, and it can be used for some work, but left unrestrained, it's not going to be intelligent in the way that you think. So I just wanted to sort of just park that there. I think the other part of it is I think of AI as a tool. So it's a tool. You have Microsoft Office tools. You have all sorts of tools on your desktop that you can access computer systems. If you think of AI as a tool that's going to help you with your day-to-day work and kind of keep it in that box and use it for that rather than human judgment, decision-making, wisdom, that all of those things that kind of are really hard to kind of define, and we don't really know where they come from, but they're in us, human agency, having control. Those are the kind of things we shouldn't rely AI on to do. And this is something that I talk quite a lot about. So there's certain things it's kind of good at. Let's leverage that. Let's dial that up. But let's not assume that it's accountable for decisions. It shouldn't make decisions. It should guide us and help us where it can. And it should automate some work that otherwise is time consuming. It's really good at finding data, sorting, filtering, summarizing, categorizing, that kind of thing. And I think the final thing is this word of AI agents. AI agents is nothing more than AI doing 2 or 3 things one after the other. So if you think of ChatGPT, you ask it a question, gives you an answer. That's called a single shot. An AI agent will take the question you ask it, and it will go off, and it will do a search, and then it will tell you it's doing something. I'm going to tell you it's doing something else. It's still the very same ChatGPT with some bells and whistles on, and then it's going to give you an answer, and it's going to tell you it's right. But it's really the same thing, right? It's just called an agent, and people love calling them agents. So I'll pause there, Ahmed.
Yeah, so on that, to continue on that, as organizations look at anchoring trust as a new operating system,
Yeah.
where should organizations draw a line between automation and human interaction, specifically from the lens of, say, the donor experience?
I think every organization, whether in the charity sector or a commercial organization, really needs to look at what their strategy is. So I always go back to business strategy. What are we trying to achieve, and where could AI help us? Not what AI could do to transform your organization and suddenly do something different. It's where could AI fit in? So if you have a look at strategic aims, when we do this at the bank where I work, and we say, look, what areas of what we do where we have, say, friction, or that we might find difficult, or that might be cumbersome, how could we make it potentially more efficient? How could we reduce errors? How could we help vulnerable customers? And we take this really seriously. Lots of customers who don't like interacting with apps. What can we do to help that interaction be better? And what tooling could we use? And that tooling doesn't mean that you point AI at your vulnerable customers, for example. It might mean that your call operators and call handlers, you give them AI to support them in a conversation with a customer. So actually you uplift the quality of a conversation with a customer. So your call center operator would have more time to listen and think about the call rather than making lots of notes and trying to make sure that the notes are accurate and so on and so forth. And a lot of organizations are doing that. You can obviously transcribe calls, and you can run an AI over it at the same time, and it does a pretty good job of summarizing text. But then that frees up people to devote more time to that we think is really important. So I think finding those things within your organization, recommend a focus study, maybe a 2-week sprint with an organization to support you through that path, and really hone in on, we call them big rocks. I don't know why banks do that, but they call them big rocks. What are the big things where you think AI could really support and help? And choose low stakes ones. And what I mean by low stakes is, if you choose something to use AI for, if it fails, it's not critical, right? There is a manual process or an existing process that you could revert to quite quickly. So don't think AI is always going to just give you the right answers and be the magic bullet. It actually takes a lot of learning, a lot of craft. If you have data scientists or IT folk or an IT department in your organization, they're going to need to learn tools to help them build that AI and use ChatGPT in the right way within the organization. And the hunt for talent is really tough at the moment. It's not a lot of people really understand how to work with these technologies. So I think all of these journeys are learning experiences, and you're not really going to get it by, getting a textbook or going on a course and thinking you've cracked it. So I think that's one. I think principles as well. So the principles of your organization, we have a principles in the bank and values that the bank stand for. And I'm lucky enough to chair the AI ethics panel or committee at the bank. And everyone that comes to me saying, I want to use AI for something, we say, okay, how is it aligned to the values of the bank? And everyone has to talk through that and convince and justify the committee that their use of AI is upholding those values. And if they can't really explain it, we tend to take a fairly dim view. So it needs to be supported by not only the strategy of your organization, but also by the values and principles that you stand by.
As organizations move from experimentation to enterprise responsibility, um, what should your organization consider to be ready to scale across their product, process, people?
Yeah.
Um, what advice to a nonprofit CEO would be the first structural change
Yeah.
they would consider making before scaling AI?
Yeah. I think probably 2 or 3 things, and I talk about them in the book. I think AI literacy is really important, right? So making all of your colleagues aware of what AI is and what it isn't, the ethical challenges, why is AI unfairly biased? Why does that come about? And then there's a reason for that. So we and organizations I work with spend a lot of time building training courses, quite lightweight. These don't have to be technical at all. They can be quite easily digested and be quite short, but introducing them to these ethical risks around transparency, privacy, explainability, because these systems aren't explainable. So I think that's really important, and maybe more detailed training for your data scientists or your IT folk who you're going to rely on to build those systems. So we have led training depending on your role in an organization. I think that's really important. I think the next most important thing is actually find someone in your organization that's your kind of AI champion. And really, again, that doesn't have to be a technical person. It can be someone who has a passion for AI, and in particular responsible AI. And I find there's lots of people. I mean, lots of people approach me and want to work in my team, and I find they've been reading about it, and they've got this desire to want to make sure that AI works well, and it doesn't have all the limitations, and it's not unfair, and so on and so forth. It's actually it's really enlightening when people come to me and say, I really want to do this, and I'll even do some work on the side while I've got my day job and so on. So I think finding someone that's got a passion and really believes in it, and having that person as your AI champion is really good. If you're a larger organization, you have a chief AI officer, which could be someone with prior experience in AI in an organization. And it's really that person's job to ensure that, I think, and in the book where I talk about this, is to create, I call it a committee, you can call it what you like, but the different people in the organization that are the stakeholders in AI. So you might have your technical people, you might have someone in charge of comms, you might have someone in charge of privacy. So the different stakeholders in the organization that are going to be affected by AI, and it's a lot. In a bank, there's a lot of those people, because AI risks cut across so many of those different disciplines. So data privacy, legal, uh, model risk, which is the calculations within the system. Um, and having those people in that committee to help make decisions and drive AI. And there are processes, there's risk management processes that are quite mature. There's some organizations have, and all of those people need to ensure that their department plays a role in managing those risks. So depending on the size of your organization and how much budget you have for AI, really depends on what that looks like. So it might be appointing a volunteer as a champion, it might be hiring somebody who can with expertise, or it might be, if you've got data scientists and machine learning engineers, it might be having them involved in that as well.
And regarding those risks, the core risks, be it bias, privacy, accountability, transparency, which should nonprofit leaders prioritize first and why?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question quite a lot, and it's actually really hard. It's actually really hard because if I think I've got one that I think is the most important, I then look at the other one. I think, oh God, that's actually really important as well. Um, but I mean, look, let's start with unfair bias. So your AI systems that you use, especially if you're using something like ChatGPT, there will be bias in the system. But the thing is, you don't know when the bias will manifest itself. It can come out, it doesn't always come out, but it will come out because of the prompt that you give it. So the prompt that you type and how you type it and what's in that prompt, I know this sounds bizarre, affects what the output from the model is. And you won't know ahead of time what that is. So what can you do about it? And what we do and what other organizations do if they have fairly large budgets is they buy technology components that you can put alongside your gateway into the model. So your bit of IT infrastructure that opens a connection into the model. It's an API connection. There is technology that you can put right there that will trap and identify biased responses, toxic language, undesirable language, so on and so forth. And vendors are building this stuff, right? There's free software out there on GitHub. You can download it and install it, and it's free. IBM, for example, provide over 70 different routines to spot bias, and that's free. Just download it if you've got an IT specialist in your org, and there'll be instructions on how they can install it. So you don't necessarily need a large budget for some of these things. The technology components can actually be downloaded, and there's a load of people just building them because they think it's the right thing to do. But of course, the slight overhead there is you have to manage this yourself. So you will need an IT specialist. So I think spotting bias is a big one. Transparency is so important. So AI generated content, whether that's imagery, or video, or even text, I advise in the book, like, and NatWest as well. You put you put a tag on the output saying this has been generated by AI, supported by humans. For example, could be a very healthy thing to put on anything that comes out of AI, and be really clear as well. Avatars, for example, a lot of people seem to want to create an avatar so it can be lifelike and talk to people and so on and so forth. And there's a plus side of that. Some people that feel awkward talking to other people. Maybe an avatar is less intrusive and have a conversation. You might want to interact in certain ways that some people feel more comfortable with. Make it really clear that is an avatar. It's not a human. Don't try and make it so human-like is my advice. Don't try and trick people into thinking it's so human-like that they might be tempted into forgetting it's a program. So I think some of those are quite nuanced things, but I think that bit of transparency, and you asked for one, now I'm going to talk about accountability. So I can't separate them. Accountability is don't surrender responsibility and say the AI did it. Like Canada Airways did this. I don't know how many people read about that article, Canada Airways chatbot. I think it either refunded a customer a load of money or refused, and it was the wrong decision. And the customer, caused a stink about it. And the CEO said, well, that chatbot, that was the same as one of our call operators. If they said that and it's wrong, then they're liable, not us as a company. The judge overruled that and said, no, it's your IT system. You are liable. It wasn't a human. It really was an AI system. So I think that accountability point is really important. Knowing that your organization is actually accountable for every decision it's a small statement, but it's actually really quite a big thing when it comes to AI.
Okay. Final question, and then we'll pause for some questions if there's any from the from the audience, but what does a sustainable AI enabled nonprofit look like in 5 to 10 years?
Um, I was thinking about this question as well, and sustainability is really important. So we've all heard about the proliferation of data centers and so on and so forth. They're being built all the time, all over the world, and all the big tech companies are even building nuclear reactors to power their data centers because there's not enough energy in the grid, especially in the US. And we have a big initiative that we've announced here in the UK. So we have strain on energy. We will have a climate issue, I think, because actually there's more data centers being built powered by fossil fuels than there are by natural gas and other non-fossil fuels. And finally, and water depletion. Sorry, the water depletion is the other. You need water to cool data centers. There's some good work being done on closed loop cooling systems that don't drain water. But I think the thing I advise and what we're doing in NatWest is we're striving to be really clear about how much energy our AI systems use. We should be able to report it, and we should take steps to minimize it. And that's minimizing usage of those natural resources whilst maintaining accuracy of your AI. And there are trade-offs, and it is pretty hard. It's pretty complicated. But I think every charity, every organization should be clear about the fact that if you are using AI, you are, inadvertently, but you are contributing to to this issue. And then there's social sustainability as well. So the use of that AI and whether you're alienating certain social groups or not. Who are the people that really benefit from your AI? And is it all of your customers and people you interact with, or is it just some small group? So that kind of social sustainability, I think, is really important as well. And I think maybe not enough work has been done on that to date. And look, there are resources out there as well. I think one of the questions, there's charity, I think Code of Practice. I've been doing a bit of research. I can share some links. There are non-profits that have codes of conduct and governing bodies in your sector where they publish recommendations, principles that are voluntary. They're actually really similar to the ones we have in the bank from the reading I've done. And I think avail yourselves of those. So it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You don't need to employ an AI ethicist and a team and for 6 weeks to come up with your principles. They can be found, and there are non-profit organizations that will tell you how to implement them as well. It's really easy saying your code of conduct is A, B, C, D, and E. It's really hard, actually, to make it real. To make it real involves some of the things I said earlier about appointing key people, having your data scientists understand it, the literacy element as well. So all of those things have to come into place. But there are a lot of free resources that are available from your sector and from other non-profit organizations that just want to do the right thing. And I do get approached by many of them as well. And I can share some links if anyone's interested.
Thank you. We can pause here and see if there's any questions.
Oh, maybe another mic.
Need to.
Hello.
Yeah, there it is.
I could have just shouted. And so I think it's great to hear what NatWest is doing, and it sounds like a really responsible approach. And I think that the people sitting in this room in general, it's a non-profit. It's kind of focus, and so obviously the ethical questions of deploying AI within our non-profit businesses would should be top of mind for us. But if you then take AI and you couple it to the engine of end stage capitalism outside of NatWest and non-profits, do you think there's a possibility that those large players end up creating spaces where there isn't an opportunity to run clean ethical AI services because the only services you can run are those provided by OpenAI or by and they're the only providers. Everything else effectively gets Amazoned out of existence, and it's use them or don't use anybody, and you've given your ethics over to them. Is that a concern that you have? Like is that?
Yeah, I mean, the Competition Markets Authority talk about this quite a lot. The fact that it's the North American big tech vendors that are dominating the market. And in fact, we're all going to end up using their models. And then there's regulatory capture and so on and so forth. And I think, look, that is a clear risk. So I think what organizations have to do is the bit they have to, we call it keeping it sovereign AI. The bit they have to do, and we have to do as organizations, is make sure that the guardrails that you implement, the safety checks, the controls, the human in the loop, are retained within your organization, right? And we can do a lot on that. The underlying model you can't change, but the analogy, and if that sounds a bit spooky, let's take an analogy. So I've been a software engineer for many years, for 40 years. I remember when when the internet was born and the web was born in 2000. We all remember the dot-com boom, and there was the browser wars. So there was Internet Explorer, there was Netscape Navigator, there was Mosaic, there was Safari, and a lot of people in the industry thought the next big tech company that's going to dominate the web would be the company with the best browser, and so it was the browser wars. But it wasn't that at all. When we wind forward now 25 years, you use any browser you want, doesn't really matter. It's a commodity. So my opinion is a lot of these models will just become commodities. What will make the difference is what you build on top of them. The technology and the interoperability and the layers of whatever's going to be built. Unfortunately, social media was built on top of the web and that had its own problems. But we've learned lessons from that. I hope we've all learned lessons from that, and certainly big tech companies and the regulators. So I think there's going to be more built on top of the models that we can capture. We as in large organizations, we as in this country, for our customers and our citizens, that we will have control over. But that kind of battle has yet to come. So, but I think the battle over the model will become a bit of a footnote, if you like. That's what I hope for anyway. But we have to navigate that. We have to make it like that rather than let's just see what happens, right? Because if we know what will happen, we'll have the big tech companies, right, going for the profit, and we'll all be victims. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Is there a trick?
I think there's
Is there a trade-off between, so in my charity, we've shut off access when you're on our server to ChatGPT.
oh, closed it, right?
You've got to use Copilot because our IT department feels that keeps it in an enclosed universe. However, and that's fine because I don't need my most recent board paper circulating all over the universe. However, that means that the intelligence of this AI system of Copilot is that much smaller, right? It's limited compared to something that everyone's feeding in on. Is that right or not? That's what we're not sure about.
No, it's not.
Right.
It's not right.
So there's no disadvantage to shutting it down to a smaller one.
No.
So is that what everyone should do? Is the question.
Yes, and that's what
And
we
by
do.
the way, I have a PhD from the early 90s, but it's in medieval art history, and there's a lot less money in that, my friend. A lot less money. So anyway, so we should all be using whatever sort of internal system we can, as opposed to a general public.
Yeah, sorry that's a really good point actually. So yeah, Microsoft is in every organization, and there as your framework, that's the infrastructure of the Microsoft stuff that you'll have. You have Office and all these other tools. They provide Copilot, the Office 365 Copilot and Teams Copilot, Copilot Chat. It's behind that, all of those fancy names, is an OpenAI model. It's a ChatGPT-like model. It might not be the ChatGPT in your web browser, but it's the full thing, all bells and whistles. And that is what you're accessing when you type that prompt in, or your board, whatever. So you are availing yourselves of the full capability. But what you are getting, and it's proven so far to be pretty safe, is your prompt is not leaking outside of your org, and any data that kind of you put into that is retained within the perimeter of your infrastructure. And to date, that has been the case. There's been a couple of scare stories, but again, Microsoft sort of fixed that patched it up rather. So, yeah,
Great.
Yeah, you're not getting a cut down thing.
All right. One last question.
So just following on from that, does it feel more cut down because as an IT organization, we have to apply governance and policies over the top of it? So, if you use a ChatGPT, that's the free version, it hasn't got the same restrictions, and that's by design because the organization needs to protect its own IP and its own stuff. So it feels a bit more locked down. That's my interpretation of it.
Yeah. Microsoft are quite vague about the difference between the ChatGPT you get through that as your thing, Copilot thing, versus that one on the web. They're quite, they're not telling you exactly what's different. But one thing we take comfort in is the fact that Microsoft, for example, Microsoft said, if you use Copilot and it gives you a response, and that response is found to be in breach of copyright or IP, you can come to us and we'll cough up, right, for your costs or whatever damage has been caused. Now, I haven't seen a court case yet that actually tests that hypothesis, but IBM and Microsoft have that protection in place if you as an organization want to avail yourselves of that. So I think they would have put in some safety controls and measures into those models that you don't find on the web version. But I have to say, these big models are absolute. I mean, they've been trained on so much data that's on the web. You kind of, when you type a prompt in there, you're just using a tiny titchy part of that model. They're much bigger. They're like Ferraris, and really what you want is a bicycle, right? But you're having to use this massive thing, but you're only just scratching the surface of it. So if you feel like you've got a cut down version, it's really not going to make a difference. If you're doing PhD level research or you maths Olympiad stuff and all that, maybe, but we're not, right? A lot of what we do is work, which is different. So I hope that answers your question, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Well, I will wrap up here. Thank you, Dr. Paul. Please make sure to